Hello, my name is Michele, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Today marks the beginning of year 3 of podcasting and the wrap up of year 2. This has been such a fun time, and it's difficult to believe that 2 years are already behind us. Each year, I love to stop and reflect on all that I've learned from hosting this podcast. I'm sure that you all love to have times of reflection in your own life and business. What I've realized is each person and each topic has had a teachable moment, and most of them have had more than one. My continued hope is that each of you listening has had your life and your business enriched in countless ways from this podcast. I am also going to ask you to give us a review. You can review it wherever you listen to the podcast. I haven't asked for reviews in more than a year, but it does help others find us. And so if you could take a minute to give us a review on wherever you listen, that would be super helpful, and I would be very thankful. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. As many of you know, I contemplated 2 years before even starting this podcast back in 2018. I'd been thinking about it since late 15, early 16. Even back in that time in 15, 16, I purchased everything I needed, and then I put it on a shelf and waited, because I realized at that time that I did not have the bandwidth to produce a podcast, do the business that I had, keep it all going, and do it at the level that I wanted to do it. And it took me 2 years to clear my head and my schedule to be able to really commit to what it would take to build a podcast. Because I don't know if how many people know, but a lot of these podcasts that we produce, for every hour of interview, it could take 3 to 5 hours behind the scenes to do the editing, to do show notes, to do the marketing, to do the planning and the prep work. And so that's a lot of hours for 1 hour to listen. It really is a lot of work, but it's well worth it. And while some podcasters watch the number of listeners and subscribers and they use that as a vanity metric, I check it very little. Why? Because honestly, if you're the only one listening, and if you are able to shift your mindset around profitability, then to me it's worth it. Just you. I decided at the very beginning, and still hold this dear, I'm willing to do this work and share it as long as I'm learning, and I'm offering the same to you. And when we're no longer learning and this is becoming too much and not a labor of love and enjoyment, then I'm not going to do it. The good thing is I'm still having a really good time, and I'm still learning a lot, and I know that you are learning with me. So, like the 2 years before, what I'd love to do is share with you my favorite highlights of each episode from the last year. This offers not only a refresher on my guest, but if you're new to the podcast, it gives you a hint of what you might want to go back and listen to. Or maybe you've listened all along, but you're in a different place in your business now than you were 6, 8, 10 months ago. It's just a good reminder of where you could go to look for information that maybe you need now and didn't need then. So we're going to start this yearly reflection with episode 57, which was Ashley Uhl's episode. And the thing that I learned from Ashley was that we need to be intentional in creating a client experience. Define what you want it to be and then work towards it. Always keeping yourself in the mindset of your client. So always try to think like they think. Next, Jennifer Smith shared with us about creating a board of directors for your business and how vital that is. This board helps you see your business in different ways and gives you a sounding board. And it also helps if you wanted to create a board of directors for your personal life. Think about, this is one of the conversations she and I had, was who are the top 5 people that you hang out with the most in business and in life? Because they are shaping who you are and who you are becoming at any given moment. That was a great reminder to look at my top 5 people in those categories and ask myself, is that really the top 5 people that I wanted to be shaping who I'm becoming? Jana Phipps shared with us her journey of courage to leave a corporate job and branch out on her own, following her passion for beautiful embellishments. We know her as the Trim Queen. And she really gave us a great reminder that adding a bit of flair can also add to the bottom line. I started doing more solo podcasting this last year, and I really enjoy being able to provide insight based on my expertise. So one of the next episodes was where I talked about trust being what we're selling. Trusting in ourselves builds confidence, and with that confidence, we gain the trust of our clients. And that's why it's so important to work on really knowing what we know really well and trusting ourselves. Amy Ferrer of Miko and Boone joined us next, and she shared with us her journey in business and how she has pivoted within the industry more than once. Her care for other designers came through loud and clear as she's worked to focus on supporting them through procurement services. Rochelle Plett joined us again as a follow-up to episode 8, where she shared the struggles that led her to close her business. From her lessons learned, she shared that Profit First really changed her finances, providing freedom, and then she also reminded us to ask for help when you know you need it. Don't wait. Jamie Lieberman joined us next, and she's an attorney. And what she talked to us about, and what we could tell immediately, was that she is an approachable attorney. And so, sometimes we think that that is an industry that we don't understand, or that's difficult, or that they're kind of separate. And she just offered this opportunity for us to see that we can find those support people that are similar to us, that like us, that understand us. And then she also gave us such a great wealth of information about business formation, business protection, and how to set it up correctly from the beginning. On the very next special episode, my husband Joel joined me. And I have to say, I love all of you, but this was one of my favorite episodes because I got to talk to my sweet husband, who actually doesn't even listen to podcasts. I think the only reason he knows what they are is because the boys and I talk about it. But this has been one of my most listened to episodes this year. And he and I talked very candidly about what it was like to be married to an entrepreneur and to navigate 20 years of this together while growing our family. One of the highest praises for this episode was when our grown son listened, and they called us and they said how much they loved it and what they remembered from growing up and how they felt about the different situations we talked about. And then they said this: wow, it kind of felt like we were in the room having a conversation with you and Dad. Like it was like really the way it is in our house. And that just made my heart explode, because my goal is to come to you on this podcast so that if you hear me on this podcast, it would be the same if I talked to you in person or at any other time. And so that was high praise from our sons. Next, Amber De La Garza joined us and gave us her definition of productivity, which I love. And it's this: productivity is investing your best time into your best activities. I got to tell you, I've been holding on to that when looking at it in my own business, and I hope you have too. Cindy Lynn was our next guest, and she helped us break down the profitability of staging as a business and reminded us that sometimes it could be a blurry line between staging and design, and that there's room for everything. And so we want to make sure that we're building the business that we love, doing what we love, and keeping it profitable. Sherry Wilson is a bookkeeper, and she shared some of her insight into the complexities of bookkeeping for the interior design industry. This industry hits almost every aspect of bookkeeping, and it can be complex. And so the more a business grows, the more assistance is needed in this area. And she really pointed out a couple of areas that we need to pay close attention to because they get us in trouble a lot. On my solo for episode 68, I talk about transparency and pricing. It had been driving me crazy in this industry that everybody feels like they need to tell everything, like we need to show behind the scenes of everything we do. And the main point of this podcast is that you do not have to tell everything. We can be honest and still price with integrity and still price with openness without giving away everything. And so I'm suggesting that we quit giving away all of our business operations information. Other industries don't do it, and we don't have to do it either. Next, Brenda Thompson joined us, and she shared very directly about the weight of entrepreneurship. And, this is a topic that I see and hear and we talk about often. And Brenda was really kind enough to give it voice. Being aware of the amount of work that it takes to build a firm and then keeping your sanity all along the way takes a lot of intention. And I'm really thankful to Brenda for talking with me about a topic that we probably don't talk about enough. Annette Faber was one of the first to join me in the Business Challenge series. She wants to build a legacy in her workroom business, and she was struggling with the next steps. And so we kind of did an online coaching in this particular episode. I saw this a lot in my private coaching practice last year, people wanting to scale, wanting to build. And you're going to see that in some of the work that I've been doing, that is where my focus has been on for the last couple of years, is helping these businesses scale. So for Annette, we identified her barriers to scaling, and we talked through each one to help remove what was stopping her. Next, Sherry Corey shared with us that she was looking for a pivot in her business. And with this pivot came fear and a lack of confidence. And so we worked through identifying her fears and addressing them head on. There's some great strategies in this one, especially if you have imposter syndrome. Silda Guglielmo from the So Much More podcast was back on with us for a year-end review. We did that the year before, and everybody loved it and asked for it again. And so what we did when we looked at our year-end review was we both talked about how we did our year-end review, what that looked like for us, what were some of the exercises that we participated in. And so this is really a great episode if you want to start building out your year-end review process. Episode 73 was all about scaling your business. I debunked the myth in that episode that there's only one way to scale. It frustrates me when I keep hearing, well, to scale means you got to grow this huge monolithic firm. And that's just not the case. Scaling simply means growing, and there are more than one way to grow. And so if you're thinking about business growth, start with episode 73. Sherry Uhl joined us next for another of the Business Challenge series. This was a really neat episode because Sherry had a job that had gone sideways. And if you've been in business for any amount of time, and if I'm watching you out on Facebook and all the groups, I know that every single one of us at some point has had a job that went sideways. And it really shook her confidence. Years upon years of work and success was easily forgotten with one really bad job. And I have seen this occur time and time again. And so that's what we worked through on the podcast. Sherry came out of our conversation a totally different business owner. If you have had a job that still has you shaky, that kind of crushed your confidence, listen to this episode, because in it I offer strategies for putting the experience in context and moving forward with rebuilt confidence. Cynthia Blaskachik is a visionary. And if you are similar, you know that what happens is it's not that you just create more goals, but all of your goals are big, hairy, and audacious, as we hear the BHAG. All of them seem to be that way. And with that comes overwhelm on what to do next, what to let go of, how to prioritize and delegate. And so that's what we're jumping into on this particular episode. Overwhelm is real, but it doesn't have to stop you from your dreams. Virginia Toledo and Jessica Geller joined me on the podcast next, and we talk about their journey to scaling. They were running a very successful business, but they felt like the financials were starting to get away from them as it grew. And so they share what they did to regain control and to remove the stress that was associated with that. I love the comment that they made about their partnership too. We don't always align, but we always respect each other. That was really good. And you remember that episode with my husband that my kids called home to talk about? Well, that led me to invite them on the podcast to hear from them how it felt to grow up in a home where their mom had a home-based business. Because I hear that from many of you. That whole mom guilt thing can be very real, where we feel like if we're working, we're not with the kids. If we're with the kids, we're not working. And what are my kids going to remember? And am I damaging them? And all those questions. And I thought, well, I'll just ask mine, because I started my business when they were like, I think 2.5 and 5, or 2 and 4, something like that. And they're now 23 and 25. And I wanted to see, it's been 20 years. Tell me what it felt like. So this was really cool to get my grown kids' view. And the good thing is I didn't scar them. So they shared that I didn't scar them, and that made me feel good. But here's what's also interesting. The things that I thought were no big deal are the things that they remember. And the things that I thought were a big deal, they don't even remember. And so that was an interesting conversation to have. Harrison and Brantley, my sons, were definitely not holding back in what they shared. That they are my kids. And I love that they learned a lot of great things from watching and seeing every step of growth in my entrepreneurial journey. Jessica Williamson joined us next to talk about growth strategies for her company. That was a big request, again, all last year. How do I grow? When do I grow? Can I afford it? When to hire? Who to hire? And Jessica was challenged with all of this and how to move forward. And so what we focused on in this episode was her why, so that she really knew why she was growing this business, so that we could help connect that to her company's growth. Stacey Kennedy brought us another facet of scaling, how to scale two parts of a business at once. And this takes effort and focus. And so we dig into what and how to do this, all while trying to get the day-to-day work accomplished. And that is no small thing. Jeremy and Chandler Quarles shared with us how they have had a focus of integrating their life and their business. They work in their design firm together and have a small toddler at home. And they share home and business responsibilities so that they can grow their business and their family together. And they're being extremely intentional about this as they move forward. In episode 81, I share my aim with intent methodology to scale your business. We have 3 levers to growth: people, process, and profits. And my methodology helps you focus with intention on all 3. So if you want to learn a little bit about what I do when I work with clients, listen to that episode 81. Brita Darimi had an aha moment in our coaching. It was that she could do things her own way and create a business that fits her strengths. And when she realized this, the world completely opened up to her, and she no longer had to try to fit into a mold that left her feeling stagnant and uninspired. And she shares in this episode that I really challenged her on this phrase, starving artist. I asked her, why does it have to be that way? Why do artists have to starve? And who said that? And she agreed, and we agreed. They didn't have to starve, and that changed everything. Meg Casebolt joined us next to share all about SEO, what it is, why we need it, and where to start. I love how she broke it down and made it very easy to grasp. There were actionable items from that podcast that I could go and do myself, and you can too. Todd Palmer shared with us a difficult journey in business, but it was this difficulty that empowered him to create the life and business that he wanted. Mindset work was instrumental in changing his thinking and therefore his actions. And then learning to be vulnerable in safe spaces offered him a chance to heal and move forward. As we were in the beginning of COVID, I did 2 solo podcasts back to back. One was Perspective in Crisis, and the other was Creating a Transition and Restart Plan. And while we are still navigating this pandemic, the lessons in both of these podcasts can still serve us well regardless of the crisis or the need to start and stop in our businesses. Veronica Solomon was on next, and she offered a big business lesson she has learned, and that is to be consistent. She consistently works on her business, her brand, and her offerings. She plans, she researches, and then she trusts that work and moves forward. Her story is really inspirational. Alice Lopez and I were chatting one day, and she said, I want to talk about the challenges to run a business and raise a family. I'm not hearing that talked about a lot. Of course, I said yes. And let this be a hint to all of you. If there is something you think I need to tackle on the podcast, don't be shy. Let me know. Reach out. So Alice asked, and we decided to jump into the discussion about the seasons of life and work, how to set priorities and growth strategies as the kids age. And I'm very thankful that Alice not only asked for the topic to be covered, but was willing to dive deep into that conversation with me. Kimberly Sump brought us a deep dive into brand clarity. How do we make certain we're not giving off conflicted messages? I hear often that you all might be getting a lot of calls, but maybe they're not from the clients that you want. This is a really good episode to help you dial in to who you may be attracting and why. In episode 90, we look at our business as a set of building blocks and maybe how to rearrange them for maximum success. how to take apart and dismantle what we have and put it back together into something we love. Glenna Stone and I chat about evolving business, multiple income streams, and the supply chain disruption. She also talks about being intentional and creating a team from the beginning. You can almost hear some of the repetitive nature of last year in the podcast, and it wasn't all intentionally built this way. It was what's happening in the industry, and that is trying to be intentional, trying to grow, trying to build, being aware, doing more, and to move from potentially hobby or just getting started into really digging in and wanting this to be full-fledged business operating in a certain way. And so I love that all of these podcasts had something to do with that growth. I love episode 92, and that's how to start profit first with no profit. See, one of the big myths is that I don't have enough profit, so I can't do profit first. And while in some ways I would say you can't necessarily move money around if you have no money, you can start profit first without profit, because it's really all about mindset and choices. In this episode, we learn how to create healthy financial habits before the first dollar comes in so that we can be good money managers when all the money comes in. Next, I talked to Mike McAllowitz, and Mike and I talk about the Fix This Next business hierarchy of needs. I'm asked over and over, all right, Michelle, so what do I do next? What's next? Where do I go next? And this episode shows you how to answer that question for your company. Episode 94 begins my 5-part series. Episode 94 begins my 5-part series looking at each level of the business hierarchy as defined in Fix This Next. This episode focuses on the first level, which is sales. Sales are the lifeblood of the company, and we look into what satisfies the sales needs of the company. Darla Powell and Natalie Graff join us, and of course it's a comic-filled episode, and they share their journey to run 2 different companies, a social media company and a design firm. And so we really talk about systems, processes, social media, and financials, pretty much a little bit of everything. The second part of the Fix This Next deep dive is a focus on profitability. What does it mean to satisfy the profitability needs of a company? And what do we actually need to do that? Listen into episode 96 for the answer. Kara Cox joins us to share the importance of supportive relationships in business. I loved hearing her tell how she was mentored and then encouraged to go out on her own, and how she now tries to pay that forward. Katie Baldwin joins us next, and she used to struggle with FOMO, right? That fear of missing out, and then with building a business she thought that she should build. Both of these left her drained. In this episode, we chat about the journey to do what she loves and letting go of that should mindset. And then we create a framework to make decisions to alleviate the FOMO. Episode 99 is all about the level 3 of the business hierarchy of needs, which is order. Listen in as we discuss why order is important and how to satisfy this need in the company to move forward. One of the most special episodes was with Erica Ward and Veronica Solomon. Erica and Veronica and I share how we have chosen to integrate our faith and our business because we really don't know how not to. And this is a heartfelt episode and very inspirational. Episode 101 is a look at impact, the 4th level of the business hierarchy of needs. And at this level of business, we focus on the transformation we really offer and the complementary network we have created. Maddie Poteet joined us next, and she offered a chance to build a testimonial strategy. I gotta say, after her episode, I've already put some new things in place to gather testimonials and then to use them, and it has been such a game changer to create trust with new clients. So listen into this episode for some actionable takeaways, and I promise you, if you put them in place, it will change things. The last level of the business hierarchy of needs is legacy. So in episode 3, we define this and make note of what's necessary for this to happen. This is where we're really focused on a clear separation of the owner and the brand. Keith Knapp joined us next, and he brings light for the need to have business credit, not just personal credit. We chat about what that means and how to acquire it and what it does for us. In episode 105, we look at the 5 barriers to scaling your business. These are the roadblocks that we all run into at some time. And so I help you define them and then give you strategies for working around them. Eileen Hahn joins us next. She's a return guest with the keys to success that we need to spur exceptional growth. Learn here all about strategy, hiring, KPIs, and so much more. Eileen is just a sweet, sweet spirit, and you're going to enjoy that episode. Michele and Alex Gage join us for the last episode of the year, not counting this one. And they share with us their drive to understand the numbers in their business and to have measurements that they could use to analyze the business. And then this led them to create an online system to do it for them and then for others. You know how I feel about the numbers, and this is a good one. And wow, that was a year. I love in our entrepreneurial journey, again, that we're always learning. We always have the opportunity to learn something from almost everyone we meet if we look for it. And thank you again for hanging out this last year and hopefully hanging out this next year. I'm excited to bring you another year of great, amazing, educational, and actionable content. If you want more help scaling your business or understanding your financials or wrapping your arms around the business and getting confidence and clarity, more than you can get from listening to podcasts, please reach out. You can find out more on my website at scarletthreadconsulting.com/workwithme page. I would love to have a discovery call with you to see how to help. And now I end year 2 like I always do. Be intentional about your profit, because profit doesn't happen by accident.